I'm making the ascent to Hyungjae-bong, which is one of the peaks on one of the spines of the JIRISAN mountain range. Now, this particular mountain has an elevation of close to 1 kilometer above sea level, but because of the nature of the climb, which is very, very rocky and very difficult, really, I am around 3/4 of the way up the peak, probably more. And I still have half a kilometer still in terms of trekking to do. It's a tough climb. There are higher mountains, higher peaks in the JIRISAN range, but this is definitely a fairly formidable one. At the top of it is a sky bridge, what in Korean you call a gurumtari. And that's a nice, interesting construction. On windy days, it's not a good idea to try and cross that. It's a suspension bridge, and it's between two peaks. And it gives a wonderful view of the valley below, the Hadong Valley below, with the rice paddies and so forth. But it's the sort of walkway that you only want to take when the weather is nice. Trails that I'm walking along have been used by Korean families for a very long time. There are a couple of tombs at the very top of this peak, and you can imagine what effort that entailed for the ancestors of the deceased, because the Korean tradition is that you go to these tombs, the entire family does, at least a couple of times a year. That's a big hike. These days you can drive a car up to an elevation of around 300 meters and then walk from there, walk the remaining 600 or 700. But back then, I mean, you would just basically have to hoof it from the village around a kilometer below, elevation-wise, up to here. These mountain trails were also used by PARTISANS, by Korean guerrillas. Now, it's little known that in the years up to the Korean War, between the collapse of the Japanese Empire in 1945 and the breakout of the Korean War in 1950, there was a big guerrilla movement against the government, and one big reason for that was the South Korean government that was installed by the U.S. occupation authorities, the U.S. controlling the southern zone of the Korean Peninsula, and the USSR controlling the north end of the Korean Peninsula, was that in the south end, a lot of the people who ended up in the Korean government under sort of a U.S. aegis were collaborators with the Japanese. And there were bad feelings, bad historical feelings going back even farther than that, to the Joseon dynasty, when peasants were deeply exploited by the aristocracy. Now, these mountain trails were used by the Palchesan, by the guerrillas who were hiding from the local authorities, and they sort of had a safe space up here in the mountains. One author who's written very well about this tension, this ideological tension that existed in South Korea just around the time of its formation as a nation state in 1948, and its continuation through the Korean War from 1950 to 1953, is the Korean writer Yoon Hong-gil, who wrote a seminal novella entitled Jangma, which means the rainy spell. And in that novel, which is set in Chollonam-do, Chollonam-do, do means province. Chollonam-do is just a bit west of Gyeongsang-namdo, where Sugi grew up. Those two provinces are divided by the JIRISAN mountain range. In that story, there's a young boy who has an uncle who is a guerrilla, who's a Palchesan. by one of his relatives, and he has another cousin who's conservative, who is in the South Korean army and fighting these guerrillas who are considered Reds, communists. And the novella really captures well the sort of poignancy and the dilemmas of these types of ideological civil wars. So there, just over my shoulder, is the Gurumdari, the cloud bridge. And as you can see, it's a suspension bridge that extends between two peaks. And the only reason for its existence is basically to give an experience, a view, to hikers. It may provide something of a shortcut between the two peaks, but its real purpose is experiential. Now, in that direction is also Hyungjae-bong, and apparently there's kind of like a Hyungjae-bong 1 and a Hyungjae-bong 2. This is the taller of the two, but this one here, Hyungjae-bong 1, is the more interesting because it is the one with the walkway, with the Gurumdari. And as we approach the Gurumdari Ipku, the entrance, we see that there are several of these funeral mounds. Okay, now this is the entrance to the Gurumdari. It's a very nice day today. So we're going to make a bit of a walk along the walkway. This is just the entrance part. And you see that you get this spectacular view of the Hadong Valley. All through the western part of Korea are these mountain ranges, and then these beautiful areas for agriculture. Now, the flat area where all the rice paddies are used to be part of the ocean too, and as the seas receded, they left behind a very rich silt, which was perfect for agriculture. So on the west side of the Korean Peninsula, there is a lot of rice farming, and a lot of it is done in these flat valleys. So here we are at the entrance to the Gurumdari, to the cloud ridge, and there's a sign that says Hyunjae Pongsok, 0 meters per second. So there's very little wind today, so it's a perfect day. It's sunny, the air is very clear, there was a lot of dust in the air yesterday, but today is just about perfect. So it's a good day to walk onto the bridge. As I said earlier, during windy days, you might as well not bother. Not only does it become very chilly like a knife, but the bridge sways, and it's just it's terrifying to be on. It would be awkward to get stuck in the middle of this swaying bridge, just overcome with adrenaline and fear, and not be able to get to the other side. The Korean Peninsula is apparently the most mountainous place on Earth. The most mountainous country on Earth, I should say. That doesn't mean it has the biggest mountains by a long shot. I've heard Westerners who arrive in Korea and sort of scoff at the mountains and say those aren't mountains, those are hills. You know, mountain ranges in northern India, in Nepal, and so forth, even in Canada and the United States, are more impressive in terms of their altitude. But in terms of just the frequency of mountains, one finds mountains everywhere. One finds them in the countryside, one finds them in the cities. Now here I am on the opposite side of the Gurumdari. I haven't been here before. When one goes to the far end of the cloud bridge, one ends up here at another tomb site, and then a huge drop off. So it's a complete dead end. Okay, I stand corrected once again. Here at the second tomb, the one that seems to be so isolated, there is a walking trail that goes up and down the mountain with a lot of these little hikers clubs ribbons on it. Now, it probably leads down to where I entered, but I'm not going to take any chances. I'm just going to retrace my steps and go back exactly the way I came up.